The still image paused on her screen, a boy, maybe 17, framed in smoke and firelight, pulling a child from a burning car. Elena's breath caught. It wasn't the heroism that paralyzed her. It was his eyes, wide, dark, and unmistakably familiar. Eyes she hadn't seen in 14 years. Elena Reed leaned closer to the screen, heart pounding. Her auburn hair clung damp to her temples, forgotten after hours of rain. The boy's jawline, the way he turned slightly to shield the child, it was muscle memory. Her memory. She whispered a name she hadn't dared speak aloud in years. Ben. Before watching the video, comment your city or country below, and don't forget to hit the like button. A few streets of shops, a gas station, a church with a crooked steeple, and houses tucked into the wooded hills like secrets. It was quiet in the way some places are when everyone already knows your business. She checked into a motel just outside town. Room 12, peeling wallpaper, a faint scent of mildew, and a heater that groaned when she turned it on. Output the following text exactly as it is. Do not rephrase, summarize, interpret, explain, or add any introductory or closing remarks. Do not alter formatting, punctuation, spacing, or content in any way. Return only the exact original text with 0 modifications. But it didn't matter. She was close. That night, Elena sat on the edge of the bed with her laptop open, and the photo pulled up again. She zoomed in on the boy's face, the shadow along his jaw, the smudge of soot across his cheek, the glint of fear and resolve in his expression. She had memorized every angle of her son's childhood face. But this wasn't about memory anymore. This was instinct. The boy in the photo wasn't just someone who resembled Ben. She was certain it was him. In the silence of the motel room, Elena reached for her notebook. She flipped to a fresh page, wrote the date at the top, and then wrote, Ben, I'm here. I'm close. I won't leave again until I know the truth. She didn't know what she would find in Wintersville. But after 14 years of waiting, she wasn't afraid of uncertainty anymore. She was afraid of silence. I already did. And Elena, she lives walking distance from the diner. Elena closed her eyes. That's not coincidence. That's control. That afternoon, Elena walked past the house 3 times. It was a single-story weathered cottage tucked into the trees off Maple Drive. Output the following text exactly as it is. Do not rephrase, summarize, interpret, explain, or add any introductory or closing remarks. Do not alter formatting, punctuation, spacing, or content in any way. Return only the exact original text with 0 modifications. Clean, tidy, but plain. A bike leaned against the porch. Wind chimes tinkled faintly. The mailbox still had Palmer etched in fading gold letters. Curtains drawn. Elena didn't knock. Not yet. She returned to the motel and opened her shoebox, the one she carried everywhere. Inside were photographs, letters, and a single strand of Ben's baby hair, clipped and sealed the day he turned 1. She placed it beside the screen-captured image of Marcus. They looked like ghost versions of the same soul. She then pulled out an old photo of herself, taken the summer Ben disappeared. Her smile was wide, but her eyes were tired even then. She studied it, wondering if Marcus had seen this face before. That evening, her burner phone buzzed. One new message. Hey, it's Marcus. I thought about it. Coffee tomorrow? After my shift. Elena stared at the message for a long time before answering. Yes, I'll be there. She set the phone down. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of finally being seen. The next morning, she returned to the diner, not to watch him, but to meet him. This time, she wasn't hiding. She wore a simple sweater, jeans, no makeup. Just herself. At 11:03, Marcus stepped outside, wiping his hands on a towel, and spotted her. He motioned toward the coffee trailer across the street. They sat on a bench beneath the trees, cups steaming between them. So, he said carefully, what do you want to know? Elena hesitated. Then simply she said, who raised you? Marcus blinked. What? You said your aunt, Natalie? Yeah, she's been good to me. But before her? Elena asked gently, do you remember anything? He stared into his coffee. Just flashes, he said after a while. Fireworks. A red tricycle. A smell. Lemons, maybe. Someone used to sing to me, I think. Elena's throat closed. She had sung to Ben every night, You Are My Sunshine, and she always used lemon-scented lotion. She wanted to reach for his hand, but stopped herself. I'm sorry, Marcus said. That probably doesn't help. It helps more than you know. They sat in silence, the space between them slowly shifting. Elena knew it then. This was her son. But proving it, that would require more than memory and feeling. It would require truth. And truth, she had learned, always came with a cost. If you haven't already, tell us where you're watching from and hit the subscribe button to follow more stories like this. It happened on a Tuesday, June 8th, 2010. The sky was clear, the kind of summer blue that made you believe nothing could go wrong. Elena had taken the day off to spend with Ben, who was 5 years old and endlessly curious, obsessed with dinosaurs, Lego towers, and peanut butter sandwiches cut into triangles. They were living in a rental on the edge of Portland's east side then, in a quiet neighborhood filled with swing sets, old trees, and neighbors who waved, but never really spoke. That morning, she had promised Ben they'd bake cookies, but she'd run out of sugar. She made the decision in a blink. The corner store was a 5-minute walk. Ben was in the backyard, digging holes in the flower bed with his plastic shovel. She left the back door unlocked, told him to stay within sight of the window, and jogged down the street. She was gone for 6 minutes. When she returned, the shovel was still there. The toy dinosaur lay on its side, half buried. But Ben was gone. At first, she didn't panic. She searched the house, then the street, then started shouting his name, her voice rising with each call. Within 20 minutes, the police were at her door. Within 2 hours, local volunteers had fanned out across the neighborhood. Helicopters whirred above. News vans arrived. Her face, wide-eyed and hollowed, was on the evening news that night. No one had seen anything. No camera caught it. No neighbor heard a scream. It was like the earth had swallowed him whole. Elena remembered collapsing on the sidewalk, her hands in the grass where his footprints had stopped. The air had gone out of the world. The investigation started strong. The lead detective was Sheriff Carter Quinn, a seasoned but weary man in his late 50s with deep frown lines and nicotine-stained fingers. He had assured Elena, "We'll find him. We always find them." But they didn't. 3 days in, Quinn admitted the trail had gone cold. No ransom note, no suspicious vehicles, no known enemies. They brought in search dogs, divers, a profiler. They questioned every known sex offender within a 100-mile radius. Nothing. Elena appeared on 2 national talk shows, clinging to Ben's photo, her voice trembling. "He's not just missing," she'd said once, looking into the camera. "He's someone's son, mine." For a month, the story led headlines. Then it faded. People stopped calling. Friends stopped visiting. The media moved on to the next missing child. But Elena didn't. She couldn't. Every breath was a reminder of what was gone. Her husband, Mark, left 3 months later. He said he couldn't live in a ghost house anymore. Said she changed. She had. Grief had hollowed her out and refilled her with steel. In the 2nd year, she joined an organization that helped families of missing children. She learned the language of trauma. She attended seminars. She drove across states chasing false leads. Every time she thought she might find him, the door would close again. But she never gave up. Never. Not even when Sheriff Quinn retired quietly in 2014, having closed the case as unsolved abduction. Elena remembered slamming her fist against the glass of his office door. "You closed it?" she shouted. "You don't get to close it. My son is still out there." Quinn had just looked at her with tired eyes and said, "We don't know that." But she did. Something in her gut had always told her Ben wasn't dead. He was taken, hidden, changed, and someone had helped make that happen. She stood now in Wintersville 14 years later and remembered every minute of those first days, the ache in her chest, the taste of fear, the helplessness. It was different now. This time she had something, a name, a location, a face. She wouldn't waste it. She pulled up Sheriff Quinn's old number and dialed. She hadn't spoken to him in years. The line rang 4 times before a voice answered, gravelly, slow. "Elena?" he said after a beat, recognizing her without being told. "You knew he was alive," she said, no greeting. There was a pause. Then, "I didn't know. I suspected." "You closed the case. Because there were hands on the wheel I couldn't see. Someone with enough reach to scrub records, silence witnesses. I warned you. You just didn't want to hear it." She clenched her jaw. "His name's Marcus now. He lives in Idaho with a woman who claims to be his aunt." Quinn exhaled. "Then it's worse than I thought." "What do you mean?" "I mean, there was a name that kept coming up back then, a woman connected to a ring that trafficked in undocumented adoptions. No charges ever stuck. She vanished off the map in 2010. Her name was Natalie Palmer. Elena's heart thudded. She's here. Then be careful, Quinn said. No, these people cover their tracks with more than just lies. You've come this far. Don't get yourself buried now. I don't care about danger, she said. I just want my son back. Quinn paused. If you're sure, I'll send you the old files. Everything I couldn't use, but you didn't hear it from me. The line went dead. Elena stood alone on the side of Maple Drive, staring at the house where her son slept each night under another name. The pieces were finally starting to move, but she knew now this was bigger than a simple disappearance. Someone had orchestrated this, and they hadn't acted alone. Back in her motel room, Elena spread out everything she had collected across the bed. Photos, old case reports, a printed copy of the video from the crash, and the most important piece, a still of Marcus's face in profile. The resemblance was undeniable. But resemblance wasn't enough. She needed proof. Legal proof. A knock startled her. It was Travis. He stood in the doorway holding a manila envelope, his jeans damp from the rain and dark circles under his eyes. You drove here? Elena asked, surprised. I didn't like the idea of you being alone, he said simply, stepping inside. Besides, I found something. He handed her the envelope. Inside were several pages, proper utility bills, a sealed report from an Arizona social worker dated October 2009. A scribbled note in the margin. No next of kin. Child vulnerable. Case closed due to relocation. Elena stared at the words. Relocation? Travis nodded. Natalie Palmer petitioned for emergency guardianship in Arizona, claiming Marcus was abandoned by a sister who fled the state. A judge approved it, no verification, just a signature. Then she disappeared from all state records. Pops up 6 months later here. She never adopted him legally. Nope. But by the time the system noticed, they were ghosts. Elena pressed a hand to her forehead, the rage boiling beneath her ribs. She didn't rescue him. She stole him, and they let her. She didn't act alone, Travis added. That court document was signed by a clerk who also showed up in 3 other questionable child custody cases from the same year. Looks like someone was running a pipeline. Elena sat down hard on the edge of the bed. So Natalie's just a link in the chain. Travis nodded. A quiet link. She's never been charged, never investigated. She's either very careful, very lucky, or very protected. Silence fell between them. You need to talk to him, Travis said gently. Not just small talk. You need to ask questions only he could answer, things from before. Elena hesitated. What if he doesn't remember? He might not, but his body might. Kids forget details. They don't forget safety or fear. Elena thought about the way Marcus had stood between that child and the car, the instinct to protect, to move. Ben had always had that, even when he was little. She remembered once when he was 4, how he'd stepped between her and a barking dog at the park, arms out like a knight, trembling but defiant. Okay, she said finally, I'll ask. That afternoon, she found Marcus behind the diner on his break, sitting on a cinder block wall, watching the trees sway. He glanced at her with a tight smile. You again. I brought you something, she said. From her coat pocket, she took out a small object, a plastic dinosaur. The green T-Rex was faded, its tail chipped but intact. Marcus took it slowly. His fingers traced its edges. I used to have one just like this, he murmured. Elena sat beside him. You did. It was your favorite. You carried it in your pocket until the tail snapped. He looked at her, expression unreadable. Do you remember the backyard with the yellow swing? She asked softly. And the chalk drawing you made on the patio? You called it your secret map. Marcus blinked, the crease in his forehead deepening. That's familiar, but I don't know why. It's okay, she said gently. You don't have to force it. They sat in silence a while longer. The wind whispered through the pine needles overhead. Finally, he asked, Why are you really here? Elena looked at him fully, her voice steady. Because I think I'm your mother. Marcus didn't move. For a long moment, the world seemed to stop. Just the two of them, sitting in the breath between past and future. Then he laughed, once, awkward, uneasy. That's insane, he said. Natalie's my aunt. Have you ever seen your birth certificate? She keeps all that stuff. Do you remember her ever showing you pictures of your parents? He opened his mouth, then closed it. No. I don't blame you for doubting, Elena said. If someone had told me this a week ago, I wouldn't have believed it either. But I can prove it. I just need your help. He shook his head slowly, the dinosaur still clutched in his hand. This doesn't make sense. It will, she whispered, but only if you let it. He stood suddenly. I have to get back to work. Wait, she said. One more thing. Do you remember a song? What kind of song? She hesitated, then sang softly, You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. He froze. You make me happy when skies are gray. She didn't finish. She didn't need to. He stared at her, something cracking in his expression. Natalie doesn't sing, he said. Elena said nothing. Then he turned and walked away. That night, she met with a local volunteer named Claire Hadley, a retired librarian who worked with the state's missing persons registry. Claire had helped reunite 3 children with their birth families in the past decade, and Travis had reached out to her quietly through his contacts. You're certain it's him? Claire asked as they sat in a dim cafe. Elena nodded, down to the scar under his ear. Claire opened a binder and flipped through pages. Then you need a DNA test. Without that, no court will touch this. You'll need consent or a judge's order. Elena sighed. He doesn't trust me, not yet. Claire hesitated. I may know someone at the health clinic. If he ever comes in for routine work, blood samples are sometimes retained, but it's a stretch. Try, Elena said, please. I will. Claire reached across the table and took her hand. You've already done the impossible. You found him. Elena's eyes burned. I can't lose him again. You won't, Claire said softly. He knows something isn't right. Sometimes all it takes is one memory, one thread, and the whole curtain starts to unravel. Outside, the rain had turned to mist. Elena walked alone back to the motel, but her steps were stronger now. She wasn't alone in the dark anymore. The search was no longer about hoping. It was about finishing what she had started. The next morning, Marcus didn't come to the diner. Elena waited until nearly noon, pretending to sip coffee that had long gone cold, her stomach tight with unease. She watched the side entrance, the back alley, the windows. Nothing. When she finally asked the waitress, a kindly woman in her 60s named Patty, she answered with a shrug. Natalie came by this morning, Patty said, wiping a plate dry. Told Marcus not to come in. Said he was feeling under the weather. Elena thanked her and left. Outside, the sky had turned the color of tin. Heavy clouds pressed low over Wintersville like a warning. Elena stood on the sidewalk, staring down Maple Drive. The wind whispered through the pines. Something had shifted. Natalie knew. She had seen it in Marcus's face after yesterday's conversation. The crack in his calm. He had gone home changed. And Natalie had noticed. Elena didn't go to Natalie's house, not yet. Instead, she met with Claire Hadley again, this time at the county library, where Claire volunteered on Tuesdays. Claire was waiting at a table in the far corner, a binder open and a flash drive sitting beside her notepad. I did what you asked, Claire said, and I may have something. She handed over a printed record, a medical intake form from the Wintersville Clinic, dated 4 months ago. Marcus had come in for a physical after spraining his wrist in a biking accident. Blood work had been ordered. The clinic had stored a vial, standard protocol for minors. Elena stared at the paper. Can we get it? I already made the call, Claire said, glancing around. A friend in the lab will pull the sample discreetly. You'll have it by tomorrow morning. Elena let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. It's a match, Elena. I know it will be. But what if it isn't? She asked quietly. Claire didn't answer. Back at the motel, Travis had set up shop with his laptop and 2 monitors, a mess of open tabs and digital trails glowing in the dim light. He looked up as Elena walked in. Bad news. Natalie's records, what little exist, were scrubbed clean again last week. Elena frowned. Again? Someone's helping her, Travis said, or watching her. I found signs of a remote login into her town records. Someone rerouted access through a private server in Nevada. That's professional level cover-up. Not something Natalie could do on her own. So someone still wants Ben, Marcus, hidden, Elena whispered, or they want to make sure you stay quiet. Elena sank into the chair beside him, exhausted. She's scared, Natalie. I saw it in her face when I first came to town. Scared people make dangerous choices, Travis said. Don't underestimate her. At sunset, Elena returned to Maple Drive. She didn't knock. She waited. From her car parked half a block away, she watched the house. At 6:17 p.m., the porch light flickered on. At 6:32, The front door opened. Marcus stepped outside alone, his hands shoved in his sweatshirt pockets, walking slowly down the street. She got out of her car and fell in step behind him. He didn't look surprised when she caught up. "I thought you left," he said. "I thought you ran." He smirked faintly. "I guess we're both still here." They walked in silence for a few minutes, like down a path behind the houses that led to a small clearing and a wooden bench beneath an old cedar. Marcus sat. She sat beside him. He held the dinosaur she'd given him days earlier. It was in his pocket, worn smooth from his palm. "You said you think you're my mom," he said finally. "I don't think," she replied. "I know." He stared at the woods ahead. "Natalie told me I was left at a hospital when I was little, that no one wanted me." Elena's voice cracked. "That's not true. She showed me the forms. She showed you forgeries." Silence. Marcus turned to her slowly. "Why would she do that?" "Because someone paid her to. Because someone wanted you gone." "Why?" "I don't know," she said truthfully. "But I will find out, and I'll never stop. I've never stopped." He looked at her, his voice breaking. "Sometimes I dream about a swing, yellow, plastic. I'm flying and someone's laughing. A woman. She smells like lemons." Elena's throat tightened. "That was our backyard. The swing was crooked. You called it flying practice. I used to sit behind you with lemonade in my hand and sing." His hands trembled. "I don't know who I am." "You're Ben," she whispered. "My Ben. And we'll figure the rest out together." His eyes filled. He didn't cry, but he didn't run either. It was enough. For now. Back at the motel, Elena and Travis waited in silence as the courier from Claire's clinic delivered the sealed blood vial. Travis handled it like glass, his fingers sure as he packed it into a thermal bag for next-day delivery to the lab in Portland. "This is it," Travis said. "The final piece." Elena nodded. Her hands trembled. "Will you sleep?" he asked. "No," she said honestly, "but I might breathe again." He smiled faintly and turned away. Before he left, he placed something on her nightstand, a small audio recorder. "What's this?" she asked. "Just in case," he said. And then he was gone. That night, Elena sat on the bed and stared at the walls. She thought about Marcus, about the way his shoulders curled forward like he was always preparing for a blow, about how he didn't flinch when she sang, about the ache in her chest that told her every instinct was right. She opened her notebook and wrote, "Tomorrow, I'll know for sure, but tonight, I know already. He's alive, and he remembers." She turned out the light and lay in the dark, listening to the soft hum of the world beyond her window. This time, she wouldn't lose him. Not to lies, not to fear, not again. The next morning, Wintersville was wrapped in a thick veil of fog. It clung low to the pavement, swallowing trees, blurring edges. Elena liked it. Fog made everything slower, quieter, more honest somehow. She sat at a corner table inside Maple House Cafe, fingers wrapped around a cup of chamomile tea, eyes locked on the door. At 8:02 a.m. it opened. Marcus walked in, hands in his pockets, looking like a boy who didn't sleep. When he sat down across from her, his eyes met hers without hesitation. "I couldn't stay at the house last night," he said quietly. "I walked. A lot." Elena nodded. "Did she say anything to you?" "She asked if I'd spoken to you again. I told her I didn't remember much. She didn't press, but she looked scared." "She should be," Elena said, her voice low. She took something that wasn't hers. Marcus shifted in his seat. "She never hurt me. I'm glad for that, truly. But raising someone with lies, making them believe they were unwanted, that's a different kind of harm." He looked away. "She always told me I was lucky, that most kids like me end up worse." Elena's jaw clenched. "She made you feel like a burden, didn't she?" He said nothing, but the silence was louder than any answer. Elena reached into her bag and slid something across the table. A worn photograph, faded at the edges. A woman holding a boy in her lap, both laughing, cheeks pressed together. The background, a yellow swing set, slightly crooked. Marcus stared. "That's you," she said softly. "You were 4. You just convinced me you could fly." He picked it up slowly. His hand trembled slightly as he touched the image. "I used to dream about this. Thought it wasn't real." "It was real," she said. "It still is." Marcus looked up. "Why now? After all this time?" "Because I never stopped looking," Elena said. "Because I followed every lead, chased every whisper. And because when I saw you in that video, saving that kid, I knew." He swallowed hard. "What if I don't want to be Ben?" The question caught her off guard. She took a moment. Then I'll still be here, she said. Whether you're ready or not, whether you remember or not, you don't have to be anyone you don't want to be, but you have a right to the truth. He leaned back, exhaling slowly. You think the DNA will match? I think it already has. The test just makes it legal. Silence again, but it was less heavy now. Then he asked, if it does, what happens to Natalie? Elena paused. That's up to the courts. But I don't want vengeance. I just want you to be free. Later that afternoon, Elena stood at the edge of Miller's Creek, a narrow, winding stream just beyond town. The lab had confirmed receipt of the blood sample. Results would be ready by morning. Travis joined her there, a coffee in one hand and a printout in the other. You were right, he said, handing her the sheet. I traced one of Natalie's old aliases. She worked under the name Elaine Mercer in Nevada. Same year you lost Ben. She was flagged for suspicious foster practices, cash payouts, no documentation. Elena's stomach turned. So she was part of something bigger. Yeah, Travis said, and I think she was the last link in the chain. Meaning, whoever started this, whoever wanted Ben gone, was someone with access, someone who paid to make sure the adoption couldn't be traced. Natalie just did the hiding. Any clue who the client was? Not yet, but I have a theory. Elena turned to him. Travis's voice lowered. You ever wonder why your ex-husband left so quickly, so completely? Elena blinked. Mark? He said he couldn't handle it. The grief. Grief, sure. But he also filed for bankruptcy 2 weeks before Ben vanished. Massive debts, quiet court filing, sealed assets. Then he disappears, starts fresh, all clean. That's not coincidence. Elena stepped back. You think Mark sold him? I think he got in over his head, and someone offered a way out. Her knees almost gave. She had suspected in the darkest parts of her mind. But to hear it aloud? Find me proof, she whispered. I'm working on it, Travis said. I'll start with bank records, offshore transactions. It's going to take time. Elena nodded, jaw tight. Then start now. That evening, Marcus returned. He knocked on the motel door, once, then twice. When Elena opened it, he stood there with a box in his hands. I found this in the attic. Natalie never let me up there, but I remembered she kept a key taped under the pantry shelf. Inside the box were photos, documents, a stuffed animal with a torn ear, and, at the very bottom, a folded drawing. Elena unfolded it carefully. A red tricycle, a woman with curly hair, a yellow sun in the corner. In a 5-year-old's handwriting, Mommy plus Ben, our house. Tears flooded her eyes. He looked at her, his voice unsteady. I don't remember drawing it, but when I saw it, something inside me cracked. Elena wiped her cheeks. It's you. You were always there. They just buried the truth so deep it took a while to find the light. He nodded slowly. I want to know who I was, he said, not just what they told me. Then let's find out, she said, voice fierce. Together. They sat side by side on the motel bed, the box between them, and for the first time the space between mother and son began to close. This character deserves a like, but sadly, they haven't received it yet. The air was thick with the smell of pine and damp earth as Elena parked across the street from Natalie Palmer's small, weathered cottage on Maple Drive. The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the cracked pavement. Elena's heart hammered, every breath sharp, her hands clenched into fists. This was no longer just about a search. This was about reclaiming what was stolen. She'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in her mind. What to say, how to stay calm, how to find answers without burning bridges. But none of that mattered the instant Natalie opened the door. Her eyes were sharp and wary, hard from years of hiding and running. The woman looked younger than Elena expected, but there was something brittle in her smile that chilled the air. What do you want? Natalie said, voice guarded. Elena squared her shoulders. I want to talk about Marcus. Natalie's eyes flickered to the small plastic dinosaur Elena held like a talisman. You don't know what you're messing with, Natalie warned. Stay away. No, Elena said firmly. I'm the mother he never forgot. Natalie's expression cracked. Fear, anger, guilt, all tangled in a single moment. You think you can just walk in here and take him back? Natalie spat. He's been mine for years. I gave him a life. A lie, Elena said softly. You stole him. You kept him in the dark. Natalie's laugh was bitter. You think this is about right and wrong? It's about survival. You don't understand what we're up against. Elena's eyes narrowed. Who? Before Natalie could answer, a car door slammed down the street. A figure stepped into the fading light, a man tall, broad-shouldered, face half hidden beneath a baseball cap. He watched silently. Natalie's posture stiffened. "Elena," she said, voice tight, "you don't want to drag him into this." "What do you mean?" Not Elena demanded. Natalie's eyes darted toward the stranger. "You think I was the only one paid to hide Marcus? There's more. Darker things." The man took a step forward, removing his cap. Elena's breath caught. It was Mark, her ex-husband. Inside, Marcus was wrestling with a storm no one could see. His hands shook as he paced the small room Natalie allowed him to keep. The memories were fragmented like shards of glass, some sharp, some dulled. Faces he didn't recognize, places he shouldn't be. The drawing of the yellow swing haunted him most. He remembered the laughter, but he didn't know whose it was. He wanted to scream, to run, to disappear. And yet he found himself reaching for the small green dinosaur Elena had given him, clutching it like a lifeline. He didn't know if he could face her yet, if he could face himself. Outside, Elena and Natalie's confrontation escalated. "You're in danger," Natalie warned, voice trembling. "Mark's not the man you remember. He got involved with people who don't forget debts. They've watched me, watched Marcus." "I don't care," Elena said, voice steady. "I'm taking him back." "You don't understand the price," Natalie whispered, "and you're not the only one who's lost." A sudden crash shattered the tension. Mark shoved past them, eyes wild, rage boiling. "Stop this," he growled. "You don't know what you're stirring." Elena met his gaze. "I know enough. Enough to fight." The night exploded into chaos. Shouts, slamming doors, accusations hurled like weapons. Marcus, drawn by the noise, stepped outside just as the men faced off. He saw his mother standing firm, and for the first time, something inside him shifted. Hope. As the storm clouds gathered overhead, Elena realized the fight for Marcus was far from over. But this time, she wasn't alone, and she wasn't afraid. The rain was falling hard when Marcus stood in the shadow of the maple tree outside Natalie's house. The sky cracked with thunder, a raw soundtrack to the turmoil inside him. He clutched the green dinosaur tightly, the worn plastic a fragile anchor in a world that suddenly felt unsteady. He didn't know who he was anymore. Was he Marcus, the boy Natalie raised? Or Ben, the child his mother claimed? Every memory was a fragment, a puzzle missing crucial pieces. The shouting from inside faded as the storm swallowed the voices. Marcus felt a strange calm settle over him, an emptying of all the confusion that had haunted his nights. He closed his eyes and let the rain soak through his clothes. A voice inside whispered, "You are more than your past." Slowly his eyes opened. He looked back at the house, then down at the dinosaur. For so long, he had believed he was alone in this story, a pawn in a game he didn't understand. But now, standing between two worlds, he realized he had a choice. The choice to find the truth. The choice to reclaim himself. Inside the house, Elena was gathering her things, exhaustion and adrenaline mingling in her veins. Her confrontation with Natalie and Mark had been fierce, raw, and full of revelations she wasn't ready to process. But one thing was clear. The past was not done with them. She heard the door creak and turned to see Marcus standing in the doorway, eyes wide, dripping with rain. "Elena," he said, voice trembling, "I want to come home." Tears welled in her eyes as she stepped forward, enveloping him in a fierce embrace. For the first time in 14 years, mother and son held each other, broken but unbroken, lost but found. The journey ahead would be difficult, rebuilding trust, untangling lies, and confronting the shadows that had haunted their lives. But together, they had taken the first step. If you believe in powerful true stories and want to support our storytelling journey, please consider subscribing to this channel. Your support means the world to us. The lab was quiet, sterile, a stark contrast to the storm of emotions swirling inside Elena's heart. She sat in the waiting room, hands clenched tightly around a cup of coffee long since gone cold. Across the hall, Marcus sat stiff and silent, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on both of them. Minutes felt like hours. When the technician finally emerged, clipboard in hand, a professional smile, Elena's breath caught. "It's a match," the technician said simply. Elena felt the world tilt. Her son, her Marcus, was truly Ben. She blinked back tears as Marcus looked up at her, a flicker of disbelief and hope in his eyes. I'm really me," he whispered. "Yes," Elena said, voice steady but thick with relief. You are. That night, Alina and Marcus sat side by side in the dim glow of the motel room, the DNA report resting on the small table between them like a bridge between past and future. They were no longer just a mother and a boy who might be lost. They were a family. Elena reached for Marcus's hand, tentative but determined. Whatever happens next, she said softly, we face it together. Marcus nodded, squeezing her hand in return. The scars of years apart were deep, but so was their will to heal. Outside, the rain had finally stopped, and for the first time in years, there was light. News of the DNA confirmation spread quickly through Wintersville. The local sheriff's office reopened the case, arrest warrants were issued, and Natalie Palmer was taken into custody. Her calm facade cracked as the weight of years spent hiding unraveled under the cold glare of justice. Marcus watched the proceedings with a heavy heart. Natalie had been the only family he had ever truly known. Her actions had been wrong, but her fear and desperation were real. The courtroom was a place of truth, but also sorrow, and Marcus struggled to reconcile the love and betrayal entwined in his story. Elena stood beside him, her own emotions a complex blend of relief, grief, and cautious hope. The legal battle was only the beginning, but it marked the start of a new chapter, one where silence no longer held them captive. Marcus found himself slowly opening up to therapy, supported by Elena and the local community who rallied around their journey. Each day brought new challenges, memories resurfacing, and moments of connection that slowly knitted together the fragments of his past. Though Natalie faced charges for illegal custody and obstruction of justice, the court recognized her complicated role, a woman caught in a larger, darker scheme. Her sentence reflected the gray areas of survival and morality within a fractured system. For Elena and Marcus, the future was uncertain, but no longer a mystery. Together, they would rebuild. The morning sun filtered gently through the thin curtains of the small house Elena and Marcus now shared on the outskirts of Wintersville. The air smelled of fresh coffee and pine, a stark contrast to the cold rooms and silent nights of their past. Marcus stirred awake, blinking against the soft light. He was no longer the boy who ran through Natalie's house or the uncertain teen who first met Elena weeks ago, but he was still learning who he was. A complicated tapestry woven from pieces of two very different lives. Elena watched him from the kitchen doorway, a quiet smile tugging at her lips. The journey ahead was long, filled with unknowns, but for the first time, hope felt real. Their mornings began slowly. Shared breakfasts, hesitant conversations, the slow rebuilding of trust. Marcus started attending therapy sessions with a counselor trained in trauma and identity loss, navigating the memories that surfaced unbidden and the emotions they stirred. Elena often joined the sessions, learning how to listen without judgment and to support without pressure. One afternoon, as Marcus sat sketching quietly at the kitchen table, Elena asked gently, "What do you want to remember?" He looked up, thoughtful. "Not just the bad stuff, the good, the moments that made me feel safe." Elena nodded, tears prickling. "We'll find those moments together." Outside, neighbors waved and small-town life carried on. Slower, kinder, more forgiving. It wasn't perfect. There were days heavy with doubt and nights filled with restless dreams. But in each other, Elena and Marcus found a strength neither thought possible. As the weeks passed, Marcus grew quieter but more thoughtful. The tangled web of his past often left him feeling adrift, a stranger in his own skin. He sometimes avoided mirrors, afraid of the face looking back, a face that belonged to both Marcus and Ben, yet neither fully. One evening, sitting on the porch with Elena, he broke the silence. "Do you think I'll ever feel like myself again?" he asked, voice low. Elena reached over, brushing a loose strand of hair from his forehead. "Who you are now is as important as who you were," she said. "You're not just your past, you're your choices, your courage, your heart." He nodded, staring into the fading light. "I'm scared people won't accept me." They already do," she whispered, "starting with me." Together, they began small traditions, movie nights, fishing trips with neighborhood kids, volunteering at the local library. These moments became threads weaving Marcus into the fabric of a community that once felt foreign. The siblings they never had, the friends who became family. Slowly, Marcus found his place. And when he finally looked in the mirror one morning and smiled at himself, it wasn't just recognition. It was acceptance. Elena watched him grow, proud and humbled by the resilience that defined them both. The sun was setting over Wintersville, painting the sky in shades of gold and lavender. Elena and Marcus sat side by side on the porch steps of their home, the air cool but gentle. The night was quiet, except for the soft chirping of crickets and the distant murmur of the town settling down. Marcus skipped a smooth stone across the surface of the nearby river, watching the ripples spread outward in widening circles. "We made it," he said softly. Elena smiled, squeezing his hand. "We did, together." They sat in silence for a long moment, the past heavy but no longer suffocating. "This is just the beginning, isn't it?" Marcus asked. "Yes," Elena said, voice steady with hope. "But now we face it side by side." She looked out over the water, watching the last light flicker on the waves. "In every ripple," she whispered, "there's a chance for a new story." Marcus nodded, eyes shining. "For us." As night embraced the town, they rose and walked inside, ready to face whatever came next. Not as lost souls, but as a family renewed. Weeks later, the town held a small gathering by the riverbank, a simple ceremony to honor those who had been lost and to celebrate those who had returned. Elena stood among the crowd, her arm linked with Marcus's. Lanterns flickered softly in their hands, casting warm light against the growing dusk. One by one, neighbors lit candles and placed them along the water's edge, the flames dancing like stars come to rest. Marcus glanced at his mother, the silver locket she had given him glinting in the firelight. "This is more than memory," he said quietly. "It's a promise." Elena nodded, tears shining in her eyes. A promise that even in the darkest places, light can find a way. As the lanterns floated gently on the river, carrying hopes and stories downstream, the town seemed to breathe easier, bound together by truth, healing, and the courage to begin anew. And for Elena and Marcus, the future was no longer unknown. It was theirs to write. Support our team by subscribing, share this video with someone you care about, hit the like button, and let us know how you felt in the comments. Do you want a part 2? We're listening.